Okay, so this is going to be a very quick um, run through of Hyperfarms. The reason why I'm making this video is so that way um, everybody can build them. Hyperfarms are probably the best way to go about playing the game. They are time intensive, but they are well worth it in the end. Um, as you can see, I have three of my accounts up. My food, wood, and stone farms. These are accounts that are meant specifically for these resources. Um, and I have put a lot of time into them, so that way they help me. Um, uh, all of my farms, uh, I run houses with, so my gold production is high. They are all what are called hyper farms. So right here you can see that I have a bunch of houses. This is where you're going to get your gold from. Um, Side perk to it is you also have troop training. Um, so all of my accounts have maxed houses, and they all have at least 35% troop training. And the reason why they all vary is because I have miscellaneous lore skills, which I'll go over shortly. Hyper farming is maximizing your production with a very specific um, type of resource. As you can tell, each of these accounts have 21 of one type of economic building and one building each of the three that I'm not focusing on. Um, you can also see for my civic buildings, I have 18 houses each, and I have one each of the others. The reason why I only have one is because you only need one. To upgrade your civic center higher, you need one building of each. I think there are very few that you don't actually need to build. I believe Siege Tower, um, your three other buildings for troop training are not actually needed for the civic center. They are, however, required to go to your mage level 20, which is a very huge accomplishment to have. Um, and that's because it unlocks a majority of your end game researches. Um, anyway, that is a quick rundown on what building types you need. The other things that you do need to pay attention to that some people don't pay attention to are your night levels. Um, your night levels are very important because um, they give permanent boosts that you can never lose. As long as you have a knight in a position, um, you get the boost. Like nobody can attack and steal your knights. If your knights are not in base, you're still getting the boost. Well, these knights specifically that are assigned a position cannot leave your base. Um, so you definitely want to make sure that you level up your knight hall or your noble hall um, because oops, because you get more knights as you get to a higher level. As far as leveling your knights, there's a couple different ways that you can do it. The cheapest and easiest way is to just utilize your gems. 10,000 gems will bring your knight from level 1 to level 27. Earlier, I tried to make another video about this. I went a little bit over my time limit that I want to keep. And so these Lameraks have all been leveled with one of this 10,000 gem knight experience, which is 5 million experience. And as you can see, I have a whole bunch of smaller knight experience tokens that I should probably use soon. But for 10,000 gems, you get 13.5% boost to whatever position you want. As far as how to focus your knights, you want to get 1 to level 48 or 49 as quickly as possible because of the boost that you get. Once you get it to 48 or 49, whichever one you want, swap and start leveling another one. The best way, as I mentioned earlier, is to use gems. If you do not spend and purchase the packs, a good safe number of gems to sit at is probably about 50,000. And that is because the biggest, most important rule is to stay bubbled. I use 5-day shields because they are the best. You don't spend a lot on gems, and you don't need to worry about making sure you're on exactly the same time every day. I happen to have a lot more gems than I'm assuming most people have on their farm accounts, so my typical rule is as soon as it gets under 24 hours, I refresh my gems, or my shields. Most of the time I sync my shields up. For whatever reason, this one is skewed by about 11 hours. So that is going to be that. The next part of this is going to be your Lord skills. This kind of ties into the reason why you go 21 of one building, is because each building gives you a higher base production. As you can see, most of my production skills are put into one type. This middle screen is my wood farm again. For whatever reason, that's why I didn't max my wood farm production skills, because I was maxing my gold production and construction and research on this one. I have a ridiculous amount of wood at the moment because my main account gathers wood. And so I don't really need wood right now. I needed gold a little bit more, and I don't know why I messed up on this. I should have more points and gold production than I currently do. But your hyper farms, depending on what type of style you want, I would always recommend keeping maxed construction and research points, and that is because you're almost always utilizing it. In most cases, I have gathering skills maxed out because you need more resources. You gather on farms and mains, hopefully. The only hyper farm that I have that I do not gather on is my food farm, and that's because the whole point of a food farm is to produce food, and having troops eats your food. So to maximize food production. I opted out of having troops, which is fine. You don't need troops on farms, you don't need to do any combat, and you don't necessarily need to gather. I built troops so that way I can gather to further increase my production limits. Let's see, next is going to be your boosts. So if you don't know, when you're in the screen, this yellow arrow is your boosts. Your boosts are something that you should always have active. If you are gathering on your main or your farm, always make sure you have a gathering speed activated. You can get them at the Alliance store really cheap. You always want to make sure you have your gold production boost going, no matter what. Well, hopefully you do not reach your caps, which is one thing that I forgot. I'll go over that real quick soon. But always have your boost activated. It's an extra 25% boost. Oops, slow down. It's an extra 25% boost to whatever production you want or whatever boost you have active. You can do it on other stuff, but there's no point because you just need the one for your main resource. And then, since I forgot to tell you about the caps, every resource building, as well as your houses, they have what is called a total capacity. What it means is you will produce your resources up until you hit your capacity. Once you hit your capacity, you no longer produce anything. And so it is very important to transport your resources to make sure you stay under that capacity. So that way you are running resource production around the clock and you're not stopping. The biggest issue that I have with your capacities, or the capacities of Blaze of Battle, is your capacities for food and gold are very small compared to the amount of production you can get. My food farm hits capacity in 3 hours. So that means if I am not on every 3 hours, which is ridiculous, to make sure I transport my food out, that means I'm losing resources. Houses are also relatively the same way. It's not as bad, but it is a very small capacity. So for most of my accounts, my houses hit cap in close to 10 hours. And that's if you are starting at 0. Unfortunately, I don't always empty my farms, or I'll have like 500,000 resources left. But the last thing on the topic list is going to be Dragon Gear. In most cases, Dragon Gear is going to be the same. I have all level 6 gear because I produce so much gold that I have the money for it. You can go through and get gear that boosts gold and food really easy. The hard thing is finding stuff to boost construction, or not construction, other productions like your stone production, your iron production, and your wood production. It's really hard to get stuff to give good boosts on that, but there are items. But that is everything that you need to know about hyperfarms. Hopefully your main account is set up as a hyperfarm. The biggest difference between a hyperfarm and your main is going to be the amount of time and resources you put into it. But that is it. If you guys have more questions, feel free to comment. Bye.